We're climbing towards 20 minutes to the hour of 2 here in Lagos, Nigeria. Let's continue the conversation. French economic growth slowed at the end of 2015 as consumer spending dropped in a period marked by unseasonably mild weather and the death of 130 people in terror attacks on the streets of Paris, according to figures released today by the National Statistics Agency. The Eurozone's second largest economy grew 0.2% quarter-on-quarter basis in the final 3 months of 2015, after growing 0.3% in the third quarter. The slowdown in France's fourth quarter GDP raises further questions about an already spluttering recovery in France. For the whole of the year 2015, gross domestic product rose only 1.1%. Why that marked the strongest annual performance during President François Hollande's presidency, it was insufficient to halt the rise in unemployment, which reached 10.6% last year. The slowdown in France is also an early indicator of the health of the wider Eurozone at the end of last year. Now let's talk about the United Kingdom, where the economy grew 0.5% in the 3 months to end December 2015, pushing the annual growth rate for 2015 to 2.2%. According to UK's Country Office, this figure shows an improvement on the third quarter figure of 0.4%. But the 2.2% annual growth in 2015 was down compared with 2.9% in 2014. Output in the 3 months to December was 1.9% higher than a year earlier, down from 2.1% in the third quarter, and the smallest increase since early 2013. Despite the annual pace of growth being the slowest for 3 years, it still means the UK economy is one of the fastest growing developed nations. And it's about Skybe's in a skyfall earnings for the media giant in the UK, reporting £12 million decline in pre-tax profit to £524 million for the 6 months ended December 2015. Skybe reports 205,000 new customers joined Skybe in the UK and Ireland in the second quarter, the highest rise there for the past 10 years. It was also announced that will become the chairman, the new helmsman will be in charge of Skybe. The new helmsman is James Murdoch. He's been named the chairman. Operating profits in Skybe were the highest for the first half of last year at £747 million. That's up 12%. But operating expenses were a hefty £223 million, primarily the results of paying for financial advisor and transaction fees incurred as part of his buyout of the remaining minority shareholders in Sky Deutschland and Sky Italia, which left pre-tax profits lower. Sticking with Europe, the European Commission has released measures that will help to tackle tax evasion. One proposal made by the Commission is for tax authorities to share information on multinationals among themselves, I beg your pardon, as agreed in the OECD deal signed by 31 nations this week. However, the UK Chancellor George Osborne said he wanted to see that information made public in line with the Conservative Party's manifesto. The Commission said it was currently looking at the issue of public country-by-country reporting and will publish its findings in the spring. Billions of euros are currently lost to tax avoidance every year, according to the Commission. The proposals come amid criticism of Google's £130 million deal with the UK tax authorities to settle a backlog of tax. And still a lot from Europe, where the European Competition Commission says it's willing to investigate Google's tax arrangements should someone complain about them. The comments come as the S&P's economy spokesman, Stuart Horsey, says it has sent a letter calling for such a probe. The development comes as the row over Google's tax affairs in the UK and elsewhere intensify. Meanwhile, Google has written to the Financial Times of London defending its £130 million deal, saying it complies with the law. According to the company's European Public Affairs, Peter Barron, after a 6-year audit, we are paying the full amount of tax that Her Royal Majesty Revenue and Customs agrees we should pay. Governments make tax laws and tax authorities independently enforce the law, and Google complies with the law. Okay, let's come back to homeland Africa, where the South Africa Reserve Bank has raised its repo rate by 50 basis points. That means that the repo rate, which is the rate at which the South African Central Bank lends money to commercial banks, will go up to 6.75%. The prime lending rates, the figure charged by banks to customers, will increase to 10.25%. Governor Leseja Kayango says a number of factors were taken into consideration, particularly around rising inflation. He also gave a breakdown of the Monetary Policy Committee's decision. Kayango says the MPC remains focused on containing inflation. The decision comes after the Reserve Bank increased rates by 25 basis points in both July and November 2015. Well, let's get a bit more insight into the SARB's decision this week. We're joined by a financial expert and a project manager at Oxfam in South Africa, Ayabonga Kaur. Welcome to the program. Good afternoon. Did I get that second name well pronounced?
Maybe next time. It's actually Tawe.
A tower.
Yes.
Interesting. Thank you very much. So, what do you make of the decision of the SARB to raise its repo rate?
Look, I think that decision is probably the strongest signal of the South African Reserve Bank's mandate of actually keeping inflation and inflationary expectations in line with the target band, which is between 3 to 6% for headline inflation year on year. So certainly, I think it's a strong signal to the market of their own assessment of what inflationary expectations are going to be in the medium term. And of course, our own predictions from our side was somewhere between sort of 25 basis points and not in the upper band of the 50 basis points that they decided on yesterday. But I do think that it's clearly a bleak assessment of the price environment in South Africa. I think it's not only the question of just the low commodity price cycle that South Africa, like many other developing market economies, is facing, but I think it's also an indication of some of the key sort of challenges to growth in the South African economy. I think we've had a drought now, which is probably going to filter into food prices towards the middle of the year. And of course, that's going to have a knock-on impact on inflationary expectations. I think there's also been a request for changes in administered prices, in particular around electricity, with the national utility Eskom making an application to the National Energy Regulator to have a tariff rise for the next few years or so. And of course, the devaluation of the rand relative to the dollar, which for an economy like South Africa, which is largely integrated into the global economy, really externally facing, is going to have significant impact on the price environment in the economy. So I think Leseja Kayango's decision and the communication of that decision of himself and the Monetary Policy Committee is largely in line with some expectations that we had, but I think the assessment that they've made of the price environment is much bleaker than many economists have been predicting in South Africa.
Okay, now don't take this personal, but how will it affect you?
I mean, certainly for many of us, if you think about the fact that the repo rate has a knock-on effect on the prime lending rate, which sort of ties a lot of people into what they'll have to pay in order to service their debt obligations, then definitely it's going to have a knock-on effect. It's also going to have a major impact on people's purchasing power, which in an environment of low growth is probably going to have a bleaker outlook for the growth environment of South Africa in the next 18 months or so. So definitely, I think from an individual perspective, it's probably going to make the cost of debt much more onerous. And definitely, I think the cost of goods off the shelves is going to probably go up in the next sort of 6 months or so. So definitely, I think for the man on the street, it's probably going to have a significant knock-on effect on their ability to carve out a livelihood and be able to have the same purchasing power that they would have had previously.
This is the first interest rate decision in 2016 in the new year, and the SARB is heading north already. How much of this do you think is left in the SARB to do for the rest of the year? You still have about 6 more interest rate setting decisions before 2016 runs out.
Sorry, I think I lost you there for a bit.
Yeah, the question is this. The SARB, the Reserve Bank, is starting 2016 being really hawkish on interest rates. Do you think there will be further rate hikes before the year 2016 runs out?
certainly, I think there's some kind of consensus from a wide range of economists that, of course, due to the drought and due to a range of other internal micro and macroeconomic pressures, that there's an expectation that we'll probably have another rate hike before we reach December 2016. However, I don't think we're probably going to see other sort of 50 basis point rate hikes in succession. So, say 60, 50 basis point hikes for the remainder of the APC meetings that we're going to have for the year. I think there's probably going to be a decision to keep rates as they are and really sort of take a cautious approach in looking at some of the data that's coming out from the micro and the macro economy and then making the decision on that basis. However, I think if you look at the outlook, growth outlook, and some of the major sort of drivers and indicators that the MPC looks at in making the decision, I think one can expect that we're probably going to have at the least a 25 basis point rise in the interest rates within 2016.
Okay, we thank you for your time today from Oxfam in Johannesburg, South Africa, Ayabonga Gawe. Thank you very much. We'll be back after the break. Stick around.